Hi everyone, so in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to crochet this really cute blanket with the bobble stitch and shell stitch detail. So this blanket can be made to whatever size that you like. So mine here is baby blanket size, but you can make yours to whatever size that you want. And for this project you can use any sized yarn and crochet hook. So here I wanted a chunky blanket, so I used super chunky yarn, but you could use worsted weight yarn, DK weight yarn, it's completely up to you. And for this project you will need two different sized crochet hooks. So you will need a crochet hook for the bobble stitch, and then you will need a hook which is 1mm bigger for the shell stitch. So for this blanket, as I used super chunky yarn, I used an 8mm crochet hook for the bobble stitch, and then I used a 9mm crochet hook for the shell stitch. And if I was using worsted weight yarn, I would probably use a 5mm crochet hook for the bobble stitch and then a 6mm crochet hook for the shell stitch. So you can use whatever yarn that you like, and then you need two different size crochet hooks, and one needs to be 1mm larger than the other. And if you would like the written pattern for this blanket, I will leave a link in the description box below this video to where you can find it. So thank you very much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. So we are going to start off by using our smaller crochet hook, and we're going to begin by making a slip knot. So to do a slip knot, take your yarn and take your finger and wrap the yarn around your finger once and then twice. Then take the first loop and pull it over the second loop, and then take the second loop and pull it all the way over your finger. You then want to take your crochet hook, go in through this space and pull tight. And there we have a slip knot. And now once you have your slip knot, we are now going to make our foundation chain. And you can make your foundation chain as long or as short as you like, but the length of your chain will depend on how wide you want your blanket to be. And you can chain whatever you like as long as it is a multiple of 6 that is greater than 24. So you can chain 36, 60, 66, whatever you like, as long as it is a multiple of 6 that is greater than 24. And the longer you make your chain, the wider your blanket will be. So make your foundation chain. There I have finished making my foundation chain, and for the sake of this tutorial I just chained 36 using a 5mm hook, but for my large blanket, which I showed at the beginning of this tutorial, I chained 72 using an 8mm crochet hook, and that's made a baby sized blanket, a chunky baby blanket. But for this tutorial I just chained 36, and that will give me a nice sample size blanket. And now we can move on to round 1. So to begin round 1, you want to chain 2 on top of your foundation chain. So we're going to chain 1 and 2. So we should now have a multiple of 6 plus 2. And now round 1 is a really simple round of half double crochet. So we're just going to do 1 half double crochet into every single chain. And we're going to do our first half double crochet into the second chain from the hook. So here is the first chain from the hook, and here is the second chain. And you want to yarn over and go down into this chain, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. So there we have 1 half double crochet into that chain, and now we're going to do the same thing into the next chain. So yarn over, go down into the next one and do the same thing, and now do the same thing into the next chain, and continue to do this all the way along, 1 half double crochet into every single chain. So I have finished working that all the way along, and at the end of this round you should now have a multiple of 6 plus 1. So as I chained 36 to start, which was my multiple of 6, I should now have 37 half double crochets at the end of round 1. And you want to go back and just double check that you have a multiple of 6 plus 1, and if you do, we can move on to round 2. So to begin round 2, you want to chain 1 and turn, and this chain 1 does not count as a stitch. And round 1 is going to be the first round of our bobble stitch. And we're going to start off by doing 3 half double crochets, or 1 half double crochet into each of the first 3 stitches. So you want to yarn over and go down into this first stitch, as our chain 1 did not count as a stitch, and work 1 half double crochet, and then you want to do 1 into the next stitch, and then 1 into the next. So there we have started by doing 1 half double crochet into each of the first 3 stitches, and now into the next stitch here we are going to do our first bobble. And whenever we work a bobble, we are going to do 4 double crochets together, all into the same stitch. So 4 double crochets together. So you want to yarn over and go down into the next stitch, and yarn over and pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So there we have started 1 double crochet, but normally we would yarn over and pull through these 2 loops to complete the stitch, but we are not going to do that. We're going to stop here and leave this double crochet incomplete and move on to the next one. So yarn over, go down into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So there we have started a second double crochet, but we are not going to complete this one either, and we're going to move on to the third one. So yarn over, go down into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So there we have started a third double crochet, but we're not going to complete this one, and we're going to move on to the fourth one. So yarn over, go down into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. So there we have 4 incomplete double crochets, and you should have 5 loops on your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to yarn over and pull through all 5 loops to complete the stitch. So there we have done 4 double crochets together into that stitch, and we have made our first bobble. And now we are going to do 5 more half double crochets, or 1 half double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. So yarn over and go into this next stitch here and do a half double crochet, and when you do that you should find that your bobble kind of folds over and then pops out here on the opposite side, and this side where it pops out is going to be the front of our blanket, or the right side. So there we have 1 half double crochet, and keep going until you have 5. So like that. So there we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half double crochets, 1 into each stitch. And now into the next stitch we are going to do another bobble, and we're going to do this in the exact same way as the last one. You want to do 4 double crochets together into this stitch. So there we have our next bobble into that stitch, and now we are going to do 5 more half double crochets, or 1 half double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. And now we're going to do another bobble into the next stitch. So 4 double crochets together into this next one. So yarn over, go down into the stitch, do 1 incomplete double crochet and do that 4 times. Like that, and you should find that you have 4 incomplete double crochets and 5 loops on your hook, and yarn over and pull through all 5, and there we have done our next bobble. And we're going to keep repeating that all the way along for round 2. So you want to keep repeating 5 half double crochets and then a bobble into the next stitch, again and again and again, until you just have 3 stitches left at the end of the round. So we're going to do 5 more half double crochets and then a bobble into the next stitch, then 5 more half double crochets and a bobble into the next, again and again, until we have just 3 stitches left at the end. And remember, whenever you do a bobble, you just want to do 4 double crochets together, all into the same stitch. So I have finished repeating that all the way along for round 2. So I have done my final bobble into this stitch here, and then I have 3 stitches left at the end, 1, 2, 3. And we are going to finish off by doing 1 half double crochet into each of these 3 stitches. So you want to finish off with 3 half double crochets. Like that, and there we have finished round 2, and at the end of this round you should have the same number of stitches as you had at the end of round 1, so your multiple of 6 plus 1. So this is what our work looks like at the end of this round. You can see we have our back here and then the front where the bobbles pop out, and now we can move on to round 3. So for the next 3 rounds, so for rounds 3, 4 and 5, we are just going to do 1 half double crochet into each stitch. So for each of those rounds you want to chain 1 and turn, and that chain 1 never counts as a stitch, and then do 1 half double crochet into every single stitch along. So you want to do that all the way along for round 3, and then round 4, and then round 5. So we're doing 3 rounds of plain half double crochet. So to begin our first round, to begin round 3, you want to chain 1 and turn, and then go down into this first stitch here, as our chain 1 did not count as a stitch, and do 1 half double crochet, and then do 1 into the next stitch and 1 into the next. And you can see when we get to our bobbles, you're just working half double crochets, 1 into each stitch across that bobble, like that. And you can kind of pop it back out if it goes in, and just keep doing this all the way along for round 3, and then round 4, and then round 5. And in each of those rounds you should find that you have the same number of half double crochets as you had at the end of round 1. So I have finished working those 3 rounds, so I have come to the end of round 5, and this is what you should have. And at the end of that round I still have 37 stitches, which is my multiple of 6 plus 1. So there we have finished round 5, and now we can move on to round 6, which is another bobble stitch round. So we're going to start off by chaining 1 and turning, and as usual this does not count as a stitch. So we are going to start off by doing 6 half double crochets, or 1 half double crochet into each of the first 6 stitches. So like that, so there we have 6. And now into the next stitch, we're going to do a bobble. So we're going to do our first bobble of this round. And just as down here, whenever we work a bobble, we're going to do 4 double crochets together, all into the same stitch. So yarn over, go down into the stitch and work 1 incomplete double crochet, then do a second one into the same stitch, and a third, and then a fourth. So 4 incomplete double crochets, and you should have 5 loops on your hook, and yarn over and pull through all 5. So there we have 4 double crochets together into that stitch, and that will create our first bobble. And now you want to do 5 half double crochets. Like that, and now do another bobble into the next stitch. And we're just going to keep repeating that all the way along for round 6. So we're going to keep repeating 5 half double crochets and then a bobble into the next stitch all the way along. So keep repeating that until you have 6 stitches left at the end of the round. So you want to stop when you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches from the end. And the longer you made your foundation chain, the more repeats you will need to do. So keep repeating 5 half double crochets and then a bobble into the next stitch, then 5 half double crochets and a bobble into the next, all the way along until you are 6 stitches from the end. I have finished repeating that all the way along, so I did my last bobble into this stitch here, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches left, and we are going to finish off by doing 1 half double crochet into each of these. So you want to finish off with 6 half double crochets. So I have one more like that. And there we have finished round 6, and at the end of that round this is what you should have. So you should find that your bobbles are kind of popping out onto the same side as these ones down here, and that they line up exactly in the middle. So we have our bobbles lining up in the middle of each of these ones from round 2, and now we can move on to round 7. So for the next 2 rounds, so for rounds 7 and round 8, you just want to do 1 half double crochet into each stitch. So the same thing as we did down here for rounds 3, 4 and 5, you want to do the same thing for rounds 7 and 8. So 2 rounds of 1 half double crochet into each stitch. So to begin each round, chain 1 and turn, and this never counts as a stitch, and then do 1 half double crochet into the first stitch and 1 into the next, and keep doing half double crochets all the way along, and then do the same thing for round 8. So I have finished working those 2 rounds, so I have come to the end of round 8, and at the end of those rounds this is what you should have. So I have worked all the way along for round 8, and this is the back of our blanket, and then this side is the front with the bobbles. And now we can move on to round 9, and round 9 is the first round of our shell stitch. So what we are going to do is we are going to switch out the hook that we are using. So I'm going to take my smaller hook and place it to the side, as we will go back to working with that later. And then I'm going to take my larger crochet hook. So I was using a 5mm hook, and I'm going to switch now to using a 6mm hook. So you want to go up 1mm in the hook size that you are using. So for my chunky blanket, I used an 8mm hook for the bobble section that we have just done, and then I used a 9mm hook for the shells. So I have gone, for this sample here, I have gone from using a 5mm to a 6mm hook. And what we're going to do is we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we are going to start off round 9, which is the first round of our shell stitch, by working a single crochet into the first stitch here. So you want to go down into the first stitch, and I have an annoying knot in my yarn here, but just yarn over and pull up a loop. If you ever have these knots in your yarn, you can just leave them and try to get them on the back of your work, or you could cut them. If I was doing this for a finished project and not just a sample, I would cut that and then cut it out and start again. So here I have 1 single crochet into the first stitch there, and now you want to skip the next 2 stitches. So skip 1 and 2, and then into the next stitch we are going to do our first shell. And whenever we work a shell, we are going to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all into the same stitch. So remember to skip these 2 stitches, then yarn over, go into the next stitch and do 1 double crochet, and then chain 1, then do another double crochet into that same stitch, and then chain 1, and then do a 3rd double crochet down into that same stitch. So we have 3 double crochets with chains in between them, all into the same stitch for that shell. And now you want to skip the next 2 stitches, so skip 1 and 2, and then into the next stitch do a single crochet. So go down into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through 2 loops. And now you want to skip the next 2 stitches, so skip 1 and 2, and then into the next stitch we're going to do another shell. So do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. So like that. So there we have a shell into that stitch, and now skip the next 2 stitches. So skip 1 and 2, and we're going to keep repeating single crochet, skip 2 stitches, shell, skip 2 stitches, all the way along for round 9. So we're going to do a single crochet into the next stitch, then skip 1 and 2, then we're going to do a shell into the next one and skip 1 and 2, and keep repeating that all the way along. And whenever you do a shell, you want to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, all into the same stitch. So I'll go over that one more time. So we have done single crochet, skip 2, shell, skip 2. So now we're going to do a single crochet into the next stitch, then skip 1 and 2, then do a shell into the next, and then skip 1 and 2, and keep repeating that. So I have finished working that all the way along. So I have done a shell here and then skipped the next 2 stitches. And now we're going to finish off this round with a single crochet into the last stitch at the end. So do 1 single crochet into the last stitch at the end. And there we have finished round 9, which was our first round of shell stitch. And it's really important that when you work these shell stitch rounds that your tension is not too tight. So that is why we go up 1 millimeter in crochet hook size. But also when you are working these rounds, try to work them a little bit looser than you normally would. And that will just make sure that our edges are more even on the side. And you will notice that this shell stitch rounds do go in a little bit, but we will correct that at the end with our border. So there we have done shells all the way along for round 9, and we can move on to round 10. So to begin this round, chain 1 and turn, and this does not count as a stitch. And we are going to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet down into this first stitch here. So down into the last single crochet from last round. So yarn over and go down into the single crochet and do 1 double crochet, then chain 1, and then do a second double crochet down into this stitch. So there we have done kind of half a shell into that first single crochet on the edge there. And now we are going to move on to our first shell, and we are going to go into the middle of this shell, so into the second double crochet, and we're going to do a single crochet. So we have 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go to the second one in the middle, and we're going to go into the top of this stitch and work a single crochet. So do 1 single crochet into the middle of that shell from last round. And now we're going to move on to the single crochet here. So you can see this little stitch in between the shells. We're going to move on to this stitch and we are going to do a shell. So we're going to do double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet all into this stitch. So go into the single crochet and do a shell in the same way as we did last round. Like that. And now you want to move on to the next shell, and we're going to go into the second double crochet and do 1 single crochet. So here we have the middle, and go into this stitch and do 1 single crochet. And now we're going to move on to the next little single crochet here, and we're going to do a shell into this stitch. So yarn over, go into this one and do a shell. Like that. And now move on to the next shell, go into the middle into the second double crochet and do 1 single crochet. And we're going to keep repeating this all the way along for round 10. We're going to do shell, single crochet, shell, single crochet all the way along. So whenever you reach a single crochet, so these little stitches here, you want to do a shell into those ones, and then you should find that the single crochets in this round are worked into the second double crochets of the shells from last round. So you will have a shell in here, then a single crochet in here, and keep repeating that for round 10. Repeating that for round 10. So I have finished with a single crochet, And now to finish off this round, we are going to go into this last single crochet at the end of the round here, and we're going to do the same thing as we did at the beginning of the round. We're going to yarn over, go down into this stitch, so the last single crochet at the very end, and do double crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet. So finish off with kind of half a shell into that last stitch at the end. So there we have finished round 10, and now we can move on to round 11. So to begin this round, you want to chain 1 and turn, and that does not count as a stitch. And now round 11 is very similar to round 10. It just starts and finishes a little bit different. So we're going to start off by doing 1 single crochet into this first stitch here. So go into this first stitch and do 1 single crochet. And now you want to skip on to the first single crochet here. So this is the last single crochet from last round, and we're going to do a shell into this stitch. So yarn over, go into the stitch and do a shell, just as we have done lots of times before. And now you want to go to the next shell here from last round, and just as we did last round, we're going to go into the middle, so into the second double crochet and do 1 single crochet. And now you want to skip on to the next single crochet here. You can see in between the shells we have this little stitch, and we're going to do a shell into this one. And we're going to keep repeating this all the way along for round 11. So we're going to do single crochet, shell, single crochet, shell, all the way along for round 11. So we're going to do our single crochets into the middle of the shells from last round, and then our shells for this round into the single crochets from last round. So we're doing the same thing as round 10, it just starts and finishes differently. So continue to repeat that all the way along for this round. So I have finished working that all the way along for round 11, and now to finish off this round we are going to do a single crochet into this first double crochet of round 10. So at the very end of the round we have this double crochet, so this was the first one from round 10, and we're going to go into this stitch and do 1 single crochet. And there we have finished round 11, and now we can move on to round 12. So for the next 4 rounds, so for rounds 12, 13, 14 and 15, we are just going to repeat the last 2 rounds that we just did, so round 10 and 11. So you should repeat each of those rounds 2 more times. So we have finished round 11, and now for round 12, we're going to repeat round 10, and then for round 13, we're going to repeat round 11. And then for round 14, we're going to repeat round 10, and then for round 15, repeat round 11. So we're doing 10, 11, 10, 11 again. And you can go back in the tutorial and re-watch those rounds as many times as you need to, or if you have the written pattern, they're all written down nice and clearly on there. So repeat rounds 10 and 11 2 more times, and that should take you to the end of round 15. So I have finished working those 4 rounds, so I have come to the end of round 15, and this is what you should have. And don't worry if your work is going like this, so you can see it's bigger here in the bobbles, and then it kind of comes in, and then it's a bit narrower here for the shell stitch. Don't worry, once we block our blanket and then add a border, that won't be very noticeable. And now we can move on to round 16. And the next 2 rounds, so rounds 16 and 17, are just rounds of plain half double crochet. So you just want to do 1 half double crochet into every single stitch for round 16 and then for round 17. So we have done this lots of times before. So we're going to do 2 rounds of plain half double crochet. So chain 1 and turn, and we are going back to using our smaller crochet hook. So you want to stop working with your larger crochet hook and then take your smaller hook. So I'm going back from my 6mm back down to my 5mm, and we're going to be using our smaller crochet hook now for round 16. So you want to chain 1 and turn using your smaller hook to begin round 16, and we're just going to do 1 half double crochet into each stitch. And when you get to your chain 1s here, you can go into the chain 1 stitches. So these can be a bit tricky to get into, but you can go into these stitches. But if you're finding it really hard to get into those stitches, then you can just do 1 half double crochet down into the chain 1 space. So continue to do 2 rounds of plain half double crochet. So you can see these chain 1s can be a bit tricky to get into. And I think I'll manage to get into mine, but if you can't, then just do half double crochets into the chain 1 spaces. So there I have worked those 2 rounds. So I have worked 2 rounds of plain half double crochet, and I have come to the end of round 17. And at the end of that round, this is what you should have. And now for the rest of our blanket, so for all of the rest of our blanket, we're just going to repeat rounds 2 through to 17 again and again and again. So round 2 is our first round of bobble stitch down here, and then round 17 is the round that we just finished up doing. So we're going to repeat all of these rounds again and again and again until you have the length blanket that you like. And you can do as many repeats as you like. So you just want to keep repeating those rounds, so those 16 rounds, rounds 2 through to 17 again and again. And you can go back in the tutorial and rewatch those rounds as many times as you need to, or if you have the written pattern, they're all written nice and neatly on there. So keep repeating those rounds, and remember you must make sure you're using the correct size crochet hook for each round. So all of our bobble stitch rounds here and our rounds of plain half double crochet are done with the smaller crochet hook, and then all of the rounds of shell stitch should be done with the larger crochet hook. So you want to keep repeating those rounds. So you can see here we have rounds 2 up to 17, and you want to keep repeating them. And then once you have done all of those rounds, this is what you should have. So you can see here we have 2 to 17, 2 to 17, and just keep repeating them. And you can finish off on whatever round you like. So you can finish off on a repeat of 17, so complete your sets. Or what I did was I actually finished off on a repeat of round 8, and that meant that I had bobble stitch at the beginning and end of my blanket. But you can finish off on whatever round you like. And then once you have finished working your last round, you want to fasten off. So pull your yarn out and your hook and cut your yarn. And then you want to go ahead and weave all of your ends nice and securely into the inside of your blanket. And then what I did was I did 2 rounds of plain single crochet for my border. So you can see I have the border on the edge here, and I did 2 rounds of single crochet for the border. So this is my little mini sample size blanket, and I used my smaller crochet hook, so my 5mm hook. So use your smaller hook, and then you just for your border want to do single crochets evenly around the edge. So you'll go into the side of the stitches and do 1 single crochet, and just keep doing this all the way around the edge, and this will especially help to neaten out where our edges are a little bit different between the 2 types of stitches. So I did that all the way down here. So you want to do single crochets evenly all the way around, and to give it a nice neat effect in the 4 corners, so in this stitch here at the very edge, and then on the opposite side, and then at the other end, so you have 4 corner stitches. Instead of doing 1 single crochet into that corner stitch, I did 2 single crochets, and that gave me a nice neat corner. And then when I got to where I started, I worked a slip stitch into my first single crochet, and then I did a second round in the exact same way. So I just did 1 single crochet into every single stitch around, and then in the 4 corner stitches I did 2 single crochets to get a nice neat corner. And then you want to fasten off after your border and weave all of those ends in, and then you have finished your blanket. And now you can leave it at that, or what I did was I blocked my blanket just to make sure that I got my edges as neat and even and straight as I could. There are lots of different ways to block your blanket, but the way that I did it was I took a foam play mat, and then I had some long pins, and I pinned my blanket in place, getting my edges as straight as I could, and then I sprayed it lightly with water and left it to dry. And then I left it overnight, and then in the morning took all the pins out, and my blanket was finished. It was blocked and my edges were nice and straight. It made a big difference to how the edges looked. But if you are going to block your blanket, please make sure that the yarn you are using is safe to block. There are lots of different methods, and depending on what yarn you are using, different methods may be better. So for mine, I blocked mine by spraying it with water. There are lots of different methods, and you just need to do a little bit of research into what method may be best for the yarn that you are using. And then once you have done that, we have finished. So that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it easy to follow. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more crochet videos. And in the description box below this video, I will leave a link to where you can find the written pattern for this blanket. So the written pattern is really handy, as you have to do lots and lots of repeats. It's nice just to have them all written down rather than having to keep going back in the video. And in the description box below this video, I will also leave links to my Instagram and Twitter accounts. So I always like to post updates and pictures on there, especially Instagram, and I would love to see photos of your crochet work on there as well. And thank you again for watching. Bye.